Stand still and I talk too fast. So if I start talking very fast, please raise your hand. Thank you, Alina. Okay, so this is a really tough one to follow. That's super rude. That was really nice. So I apologize. But so I'll do my best after that. Thank you for including me with this group. I really don't feel I should be here, but thank you anyways. I mean, no, really, I shouldn't be. These guys are really serious. But in some ways, maybe it's good because I think my lack of seriousness in terms of theory and architecture maybe is sort of what I think allows me to survive. Because in a way, it reminds me of a story. My Ukrainian roommate in college, he wasn't my roommate. I slept on the sofa for like a year. Pavel Burko was telling me, but it was about girls. It wasn't about architecture. And he said it was a joke. It was about this Ukrainian joke about this guy, a security guard in a factory. And every day he sat there at the same desk from 8 to 5, and he's manned the desk for 30 years. And every day, this guy would walk out with a wheelbarrow, right? Every day, 5 o'clock, same guy, wheelbarrow. Every day, for 30 years almost. Finally, and the guy would always ask him, what are you stealing? You're stealing. I know you're stealing. What are you stealing? The guy's like, oh, no, I'm not stealing anything. You have no right to look at my wheelbarrow, et cetera, et cetera. So finally, the guy's last day as a security guard, he's like, listen, I'm leaving. I'm not going to arrest you. I'm not going to do anything. What are you stealing? And the guy's like, wheelbarrows. I think too often we miss the obvious. And we look for more complexity. We look for problems that simply don't exist when actually the problem is right in front of us. And so I want to maybe use tonight. And as much as I appreciate you guys, I think it's fantastic, I'm going to use your event tonight to demonstrate multiple forms of violence. Okay. So I think the most inherent mechanism of violence that we have in our society is not guns, it's not knives, it's actually language. Language is the most violent mechanism, tool, construct thing that we have. So take the intellectual crises, right there. I mean, by definition, the word intellectual, first of all, I don't really think there are many architects, if any architects, that are intellectuals. And not by their fault or their inability, it's simply our system, especially our education system, doesn't allow for intellectuals. It doesn't. Our education system is a market. It's a factory that's producing people, and they want to make experts. They don't want to make intellectuals. They want people that can solve problems. If there's a crisis, they want to call an urban planner, an accountant, a psychologist. They're going to solve the problem. But an intellectual actually questions the very nature of a problem. The goal of an intellectual is not to solve problems, but to actually discover problems, find problems. And I don't think our academic environment allows for one to actually develop questions. We're too forced to find answers, when simply maybe the best answer is actually simply doing nothing or finding multiple questions. I had to do P4s today, and it's frustrating. I mean, it's so fucking violent, P4s, the way they treat students. I have to sit there and watch some teacher say stuff, and if I call him an asshole for being completely wrong and having no evidence, that's violent. That's an example of subjective violence, my act against a system. So when you see someone shoot someone, that's subjective violence. But so that's what this might lecture tonight, this talk might be subjective violence as well. But so that's so again, so right there, the word intellectual, I think we can't use it tonight. And then crises, and I'm very happy that you sort of defined the word for me, because I was going to do that. It saves me time since I only have 10 minutes. I think it's too late. It's post-crises, guys. We're post-apocalyptic. We're past that moment. It's over. It's done. To quote Baudrillard, we are in a postmodern world. The crisis has come and gone. The sad thing is, what's going to make everyone super depressed, there was no moment. There was no magnificent event that ended civilization or mankind as we know it. Because that's what we all want. We all want that fantasy of destruction, right? In a way, I don't mean to offend Americans, I'm American, 9/11 was the most beautiful thing that could ever happen to Americans, because it was this violent act that justified our righteousness and our desire to take over the world. We're being attacked. They needed 9/11. It was that violent act that could justify hedonistic behavior. So there wasn't it. We're done. We just woke up one day, and I mean, if McLuhan would say it was the Nixon-Kennedy debate, Baudrillard would say perhaps it was the first coverage of the Gulf War, and I don't say the Gulf War, I mean the coverage of the Gulf War, because it's fundamentally changed the perception of how we even view war. So I would say those two words together demonstrate our sort of violence of language. That we can't even, I think we can't even discuss this tonight until we discuss the words themselves. And the next example of violence would be sort of more like the systematic or objective violence that we are faced with every day. The institution, the university, our jobs. These constructs that force us to be part of a market where thinking actually is not commercially viable. When Greenspan in '89 says, you should keep your employees scared and pay them low because they're less likely to revolt or they're less likely to develop enough capital to actually start their own office, and all these mechanisms. So these are examples of institutional. Tonight, no offense, guys, is an example of institutional violence. You make us come here tonight to discuss intellectual crises. Like, that's fucking bold. And then you give me 10 minutes. I got 10 minutes. You've commercialized this whole event. You want to talk about intellectual crises that use the construct of the market. I have to do a pitch to you like this, and this is why. And then again, this is to talk about we live in this postmodern world now, and we can't do that. It's not. I know that I'm probably really pissing you off because you understand philosophy well, and you probably don't think postmodern, modern, etc. But yeah, we can't do that. We can't simplify the complexity we have around us. This is why you guys all love Pekakucha, and I bet each one of you subscribe to TED Talks because you want to believe it's true. Oh my God, all this hard, fucking massive shit can be explained in 20 minutes. Oh, thank God. I can lose weight in a week without fucking working out or eating nasty food. And the TED Talk will tell me how, Bjarke will, in 4 easy steps, explain to me how to do a tower. In this postmodern world where essentially the rules of modernity no longer make any sense. It's not rational, it's not organized, it's not linear, We are in a complex, unnerving, unsettled, ambiguous environment. That anxiety that you all have, that maybe some of you are on prescription drugs for, or you think you're depressed or not, you're simply existing in a postmodern world using the tools of modernity to understand it. And so I don't think we can talk about intellectual crises with modernity. We have to think about it in the sort of postmodern, sort of Nixon-Kennedy debate, 1960. I'm sure no one knows that reference. I'm sorry. But okay, I don't want to be so depressing. Because I'm not really uplifting anyone here. But there's another type of violence that Zizek describes as divine violence. And this is where I think we have hope in this world, divine violence. To Zizek, and I agree with this, Gandhi and Dr. King are the most violent men of the 20th century, hands down. Because they actually, through their actions of destroying systematic violence, crippling systems, attacking systems, questioning systems, were violent. Violence isn't shooting someone. That's a violent act. I'm not saying go shoot people. That's awful. But it's far more violent as a force of destruction, as a force of nature to bring down a system. So this violence doesn't necessarily have to be objectively bad or objectively good. It's simply an act against sort of a system. So I would all encourage you to somehow find divine violence. Question the institutions, question your jobs. And before you do that, we can't talk about intellectual crises. Because I don't think any of us are intellectuals. The crisis is over, it's done. So we can just move on. And now embrace this postmodern, uncertain, chaotic world we live in. Because, in modernity, it was really about man versus God, woman versus patriarchy, black versus white, slave versus master. Now it's actually real versus the unreal. That's the question we're dealt with every day. So I don't know. Again, I don't know how any of this has to do with architecture because we can't focus on architecture. To solve this issue, we have to zoom all the way out and just look at everything as we are. I mean, because we're in this. I really truly believe we're in a post-apocalyptic society, and the sad thing is, it's exactly the same. So I'm not going to leave on that because that's too sad. I'm going to leave a story by Jasper Carrott. Do I have time? Okay, I can do the story. It's good. It's going to maybe explain to you my position in this environment, our structural environment. This is by Jasper Carrott. He's a philosopher from Birmingham, describing this middle-class dinner party. And it was a very fine dinner party with very fine food and very fine wine, wearing the finest clothes. And everyone's talking a good time, very intellectual, super good. It's probably what you all want to be, in that moment, that sort of super posh, yuppie urban life. And then in walks the house dog. This is actually taken from a Zizek. So I know this is actually Tom McGowan from a journal. He's using this to describe Zizek. And the dog walks in, this mangy old mutt, just nasty, just stinky fleas farting and all that hell, comes in, drops itself in the middle of the floor, and starts licking its balls like hell. Like sorry, that was not necessary. But it's just going to town on itself, right? And then there's this anxiety, this tension that overtook everyone. And so Zizek would say this is like the 9/11 or the Gulf War, this thing that interrupts the status quo, these unplanned, these temporary sort of moments of interruption in our structural environments. So the man, a gentleman of the evening says, "Oh, I wish I could do that." Right? And everyone's like, ha ha ha, he alleviated the situation by trying to ignore it. But the woman of the house says, "Ask him and he might let you," thus bringing back the tension, the anxiety in the room. So what I ask each one of you, as I think everyone here is young, because if you were actually older, you wouldn't be here because you realize this is ridiculous. But you just embrace tension, embrace that anxiety. Don't run from it. Don't try to simplify things. Don't try to become Bjarke and say you can simplify everything in 4 easy steps. It's impossible. Complexity, anxiety, nervousness, twitchiness, this is part of who we are. And you can't run away from it. So please, just embrace the tension, embrace the anxiety. And once you do that, then we can come back and talk about intellectual crises. But until then, we're not ready to do it. Sorry.